Hello, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina, and my guest today is Olga from Gotham.knits. Welcome. So I stumbled on your account on Instagram, and the thing that caught my attention was how funny your reels are, and you like take it to the other level with your sarcasm, and you are like making fun of the common situations that knitters encounter. So, like, one of the reels that I remember was about when people, like your friends or your family or somebody, ask you to knit something for free. And then it's like you just disappeared, and it was the cat that was left there. Does that happen a lot? And like, how do you come up with the ideas for reels? And I mean, let's start with that particular reel, but then talk more about like the ideas for reels.
Okay. So I think when I started making reels, I had maybe like two or three ideas. I saw a funny video and I was like, oh, we can do that. I was talking to my husband and I was like, okay, we can do that, but with me knitting. So I had like one idea and then I had two more. I wrote them down and at some point I was like, okay, what's going to happen if I run out of ideas? Because I started doing that and I started getting followers just based on that. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. I'm running out of ideas. But now I have a list of maybe like 100 ideas and it constantly comes into my head. Okay, there's a lot of stuff in my head. So I'm just trying to put it all out there. And there's always something new on internet. And whenever I see something in the movie or in the other Instagram accounts, it always comes to my head like how I can turn it into knitting because this is what my life is about. So it comes from there. So when people ask me like where do I get the ideas, I'm like, okay, well, I can't help you because it's in my head. I have so much stuff in my head.
So do people ask you all the time to need something for free for them?
Believe it or not, it happened a lot. Some people just think that well, their excuse like or their reason for this is like, well, you knit it anyway, like you are knitting anyway and you like it, so why don't you do it for me, like since you enjoy it so much. So I started responding with like, okay, well, you can come babysit my kids and while you do that I'm gonna have my time to knit. But yeah, somehow people think that knitting is very easy, and if they ask for it, I should be honored to make it. And they offer to pay for the yarn, not for the labor, for the yarn. And then they get offended when I'm like, well, that's not enough. You would have to pay me anyway. And then they're like, well, but I'm offering to pay for the yarn. Isn't that enough? So somehow I don't know. I don't know why the idea in the world in our community is that some other jobs are jobs but knitting is just like a hobby
Right.
and knitters should just be happy to knit.
Well, so you do sell though your knitting, right? So how
uh, I used to take commissions. I used to take orders for knitting and knit whenever people ask something for something, but then I had a not a very good experience last fall, and it was two clients that like completely I would say that it broke me down a lot with the like the time and the amount of work and the amount of like my nervous system was not good after that. So I decided to stop taking commissions, and now I do sell, but I knit what I want, and then I put it out there for sale.
right.
So I still sell, but it's not like I knit what I can't. I realize that I like to knit for knitting, and I'm not enjoying when I'm being asked to knit like 15 beanies of the same color. It's just not for me. There are people who like to do that, but this is just not my thing.
Right. Um, do you have a system of how you price your stuff?
Usually I do. Well, I before I used to do it yarn times three. Plus, if there's like something, for example, that works with beanies. Let's say with beanies and scarves, like smaller items. But if I'm making a shawl and I spend about like 60, 70, $80 for just on the yarn, then that would have to be like times four, for example, just because of the amount of work that goes into this.
Right. Um, so let's go back a little bit. How did you start knitting? How did you discover knitting? When did that happen?
My grandma taught me knitting when I was about 6, I would say, maybe earlier. I remember my first pair of socks that I ever made. One was very tiny and very tight because I was like so into it. And then my grandma was like, okay, you should relax your hands and, make it a little bit more loose. So then in a pair of socks, one sock was like good for a baby and another sock was good for like a Bigfoot because I relaxed myself and I went into it and it was like huge and it was really funny. But that was like, I was probably 6 at a time. Um, and then I really liked doing that. So I was doing that through like middle school, but then I stopped and I went back to it after I gave birth to my second child. And I wanted to have something for me. I realized that I've been working my whole life. I've always had jobs, different jobs. And when we decided to have kids, I quit my job. So after my second kid, because they were like close together, and I gave birth to my second kid, and I realized that like my life right now is just basically like being a mom or being a wife and cleaning and cooking and all this stuff, and I don't really have anything for me.
Right.
And I wanted to do something just for myself. So I remember that I had a friend who she was sewing baby blankets. And I remember the feeling, I was like, oh my God, she's so lucky she has this. And I started thinking what I can do. And I remembered I can knit. And I remember the very first time I ordered, I think I got like 2 balls of yarn and a pair of needles. And my husband was like, what are you doing? I'm like, relax. I know what I'm doing. And I knitted my first beanie and that's it. And that's how I fell back in love with knitting.
Right. So when you knit, do you have favorite types of projects or is it always something new?
I think shawls are my it's the best. I like knitting pretty much everything except for socks. I like scarves. I like beanies. I like beanies because it's very quick, so you can just sit down and in 2 hours you have a perfect beanie. But the shawls is something that I really enjoy knitting.
Okay, there is one reel because you keep on bringing up beanies. So there is
Yeah,
one reel where you making fun of a ugly gift, handmade gift somebody gives you, and there is this beautiful, two beautiful beanies in that reel. Why did you pick those beanies as an example of the ugly gift? And is that has to do with your dislike of colors, or did you pick something cute just to make fun of it?
I think so. That was back when I still used to take commissions. I made a lot of beanies of different colors, like with the same yarn but in different colors, and I sold out most of them. So when I had the idea to make to make this reel, I looked into my shelves and I pretty much had nothing left. So I had those two, and I was like, okay, well they'll have to do. And um, I used to work in a flower shop before, and my boss used to tell me uh, there are customers for everything. There are people who would think that like whatever you make, that you there would be people who would love it and there would be people who would hate it. So I
Right.
was like, okay, this beanies will have to do because there will probably be people who would love to have this beanie. And there would be people who'd be like, yeah, this one is really ugly. I agree with you, Olga. So I tried those.
Right. Well, talking about your flower job, before you start working there, you were a journalist in Ukraine?
Yeah. Um, so I have a master's degree in psychology, but I've never worked as a psychologist ever. Um, on my second year in college, I started working as a reporter for a daily business newspaper back in Ukraine, and um, I finished that. So when I graduated from college, I quit, I think pretty much the very next day, and I came to the US. And here I've met a girl who had a flower shop, and she was working mostly with brides. So she was like, okay, since you have a master's degree, that would be really helpful because all my brides are like, you know how they are. So she's like, I really need someone to talk to them and to like deal with them. So she hired me. She got me that job, and I really loved it. It was, I think that was the best job I've ever had. I still miss it. I don't know if I would ever go back to working in a flower shop, but I really enjoyed that. So yeah, it's like I'm all over the place, but it's always something creative. So first it was, creating the written pieces, and then it was the flower arrangements, and now it's knitted things.
Do you feel like it helps you now with your account, with like how you managing your Instagram, with how you trying to like approach those reels and grow your Instagram account?
I think it helps. I think both the psychology and the experience of being a reporter, I think it both helps because I know, I feel like I know how to talk to people, and I feel like I know how to make what I want to say into something that people would want to read because I know how to structure the text and like what to say and what not to say and which words to say.
Right. So recently you've been doing this series of stories of like asking people what stops them from making reels, what's their writing blocks, what's their idea blocks, like why they hesitate, why they shy away from it. How did you come up with that whole idea?
Um, so at some point when I started making reels, I realized that it actually brings a lot of people into my blog, into my Instagram. And then so there is this girl, she's in she's in the US, but she's Russian girl. So I think she's like the first one who figure out how the reels work in in on Instagram and what to do with them and how to make them work for you. She released a course, and I signed up for it. So right now I'm almost done with it. I think it's the last week, and she has like all she has it all figured out. And when I was taking it, I realized that like half of the things she's teaching I already know it, but she has it very structured and very well structured. So I realized that I can also help people. Like, why am I keeping this to myself if I can also help people to do it? And now that like, the more I do it, the more I see, like when I go into other people's Instagrams, I can see what they're doing wrong, what they could be doing better, what's like some obvious mistake that obvious for me. Maybe people don't think about it. Maybe some people still think that they don't need to do reels. I think if you want to grow your Instagram right now, this is what you're supposed to like. This is what you should be doing. So
Right.
I really want, it's like when I have a lot of knowledge and I'm like, okay, people, you really need to do this. I know what to do. I can tell you what to do. Just ask me.
Right. I actually stumbled one time on your live with somebody, and you were asking like just questions, right, of each other. And one of the questions you asked was if you were in circus, what kind of circus act would you be? um, why live? Like, how do you think that helps you, or do you do it just for your entertainment?
Um, lives, I do lives on TikTok pretty much every week. And somehow I realized I've never gone live on Instagram. So on TikTok, I have my people who, when I do live, they join right away. And, it's pretty much like one way conversation because all they can do is type the same like on Instagram. But on TikTok, I know what to expect. I know who will be there. I know what we can talk about. But on Instagram, I didn't have these people. So I was like, okay, let me join with somebody. So at least I can have somebody to talk to and not just because it was a little bit awkward for me. But speaking from like business, I like business side of these things. Whenever you do live on Instagram, it helps the algorithm to like put you higher, and it brings up your page as a recommended page for people who follow the people who follow you, or people who would the algorithm think might be interested in. So that really helps. Going lives and like, interacting with people on live on Instagram, that really helps.
So one of the questions in your stories was like why you shy away from reels, and like the response was that people were uncomfortable in front of the camera. Do you ever feel uncomfortable in front of the camera? Were you like all this is natural? Did it come difficult to you?
um that's a good question. um I think I don't think I can say that I am very comfortable in front of the camera. I am definitely still shy, and still I like to overthink things. So I still do that. But I just make myself do it, and it feels good like afterwards, when I look at like when I look at what it brought me, like all the reels and all the lives and all these things. When I look at what it brings me, like the new followers, the new friends, a lot of people who are like come to me and we become friends because they started following me because of my funny reels or my life. Um, so it feels good. But yeah, I'm still definitely a little bit shy.
And also, like, I have a question about your husband. So he's like a periodically a star of your reels or star of your posts for obvious reasons. So one of the reels you had was him guessing the cost of the yarn,
Yeah,
and you
I think that
sort
was
of,
the first one of the first ones that went viral on Instagram. Yeah, so
so obviously he had like no clue about how much it cost, and you weren't very forthcoming with that information either. Does does he support you in like all these reels and purchases and your knitting? Is there like ever conversation about there is too much of it? Why do you need that? Why do you spend so much time on that? Like, where does he stand in that respect?
okay, so there are two things we can talk about: money and time. So let's talk about money first, because the reason why he had no idea how much the yarn cost is because he never paid for it. So um, the very first time I bought the yarn, not those two balls when I made the beanie, but after that, when I realized that this is something that I'd be doing for a while, I remember asking him, because I wasn't working back then. So I remember asking him, I was like, okay, I want to get some yarn. And um, the the yarn that I put in my basket is $70 right now. So I need to spend this money on the yarn right now. And this was before I started all this. So he had no idea. For him, it was just like, like if I don't know, a person would come to you and be like, I want to spend $70 on candy. So this is a little bit ridiculous. But he was like, okay. And so I got that yarn, and then I started selling things. And the money I would get from that, I would use to buy more yarn. So I think that was the only time that he ever had to pay for it. And back then, I got the whole box of yarn for $70. I think it was from Lion brand, and I was using like half acrylic or acrylic yarns or something. So what I got was a huge box of yarn for $70. So I think going forward 5 years, so I think he still thinks that for $70 you can get a whole box of yarn. Even though right now I'm using like alpacas and merino and silk and all the stuff, which is like a lot more expensive. But I think he still thinks that's what it costs. Speaking about time, I mostly knit at night, so it doesn't interfere my with our life. I knit in the car sometimes during the day when we go somewhere, so that also doesn't interfere with anything.
Except for navigation.
We really need to invest in some good navigation system because at some point I was just like so invested in my knitting. It was so peaceful, and the music was nice on the radio, and like my knitting was perfect, and we were on the highway, and then he was like, wait, are you like are we still supposed to be going there? And I'm like, actually, no. That was really not a good time. But um, regarding the amount, like the amount of time I spend on it, in the beginning when I was making reels, it would take me a longer time. So when I would ask him to film me or to be in it, it would take us more takes and more time to do it. So sometimes it would be like 1 hour to make one video. Now I learned my mistakes. Now I tell him exactly where to stand, what to film, what to say, what not to say, from what angle, when to move. So it takes us like 10 minutes to do it.
So one of your reels is exactly about that. And you're making fun of how, like, when you ask your girlfriend to film you, she's showing all the best angles and like fixes your hair and whatever. And when you ask your husband to film you, he'll just take a quick picture, turns away, and continues to be on his phone. Is that a common thing when you ask your friends to help? And does he ever complain about being your cameraman, or is he like compliant and
Um, he doesn't complain, but he rarely agrees to it. So if he agrees to it, I know that he will do what it takes. And if I need him to take 100 pictures, he will take 100 pictures. But I can't do that every time. Like every day, it would not be possible. Or like I have to find a time when he is, when I know he will agree to it. And then again, I have to tell him exactly what I need. And I have to look through the pictures quickly and be like, okay, this is not good. Let's do it again.
do your kids ever film you?
I think they did a couple of times. Yeah. Yeah. The other day, my kids were helping me. One was like figuring out the camera, and the other one was figuring out the music. So I had like the whole crew.
Yeah, and
But
the older they get, you can just hire them for that basically.
yeah, I have to use them for that.
Do they ever ask you like why are you on Instagram? Like why is mommy the influencer?
Um, I don't know. I think they asked at some point. Um, they, I don't know. We never had that conversation. I think it just at one point when I got a box of yarn, and my kid was like, "Oh, it's yarn again." And I'm like, "Yes, but this time mommy didn't pay for it. The company just sent it to her because she's so good at what she does." And they were like, "Oh." And then the other day I overheard my kids at the playground when I was knitting, and I was live on TikTok, and some other kids asked my kids, like, "What is your mom doing?" And my daughter was like, "My mom is a famous knitter." I was like, "Yes." Now all the kids at the playground know who I am.
Right. Well, that's how the reputation grows. You start with the kids.
Yes.
And they'll tell their parents and the parents will know.
Yes,
Right.
that's how it is.
So how is like living in New York um influences your social meeting? Do you go to knit nights? Do you meet people at festivals? Like, do you do any of that stuff?
Um, so I would, before the pandemic, I would knit, but not as much. And I don't think I went into any knit nights or anything. It wasn't that big for me back then. And then when the pandemic hit, um, that's when I had more time to do things. And I used to work before that. I was working in a vegan bake shop. So I would knit on the way there and on the way back. So I wasn't really into all this. But then when the pandemic hit, I quit my job and I had more time for knitting. But then I couldn't meet anybody. So
Right.
that's I always say, like, people be like, "Oh, do you go to like Vogue knitting or do you go to Rhinebeck?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't get a chance yet because like 2 years ago I was still not into it that much. I wasn't interested in it, and I wouldn't go there. But now that I want to go, it's not that available yet.
Right.
So, but what we have right now, I have a couple of friends, and they did. We have like a Zoom knitting club, so we do that. And yeah, basically, like that's what going live on Instagram or on TikTok that helps grow the audience. So I would say that most of my yarn related interactions are online,
Right.
not in person.
Do you find your project inspirations online as well?
Um, I think so. I think so. Yeah. It comes from whatever I see, and I have a couple of clothing brands that I follow that have very like um, they have their very own aesthetics that I feel very related to. So I don't think I have maybe like a couple of knitters that I follow that I really look up to, but mostly it comes from like clothing brands
Mhm.
and maybe like architecture things.
So you did your own design. You have one design that you published, right?
Yes.
Are you planning to continue designing? Did you enjoy that process? What you loved or didn't love about it?
I liked it a lot. It was a lot better than I expected it to be. It was more fun and I got a lot more feedback than I was expecting. And I made that stroll for the first time, I think like 3 or 4 years ago, but I never wrote down the pattern because for me, it's kind of easy to make it like in my head. I just knit and I know what I'm doing, but the process of writing it down, that's what was like boring for me. And I was putting it away to not to do it. And then when I did it, and I got the test knitters, and I got a lot more test knitters than I was expecting. I think I have problems with my self-esteem because I always think less of myself. So when I released the pattern, I was like, okay, if I get 20 sales, that would be perfect. If I get 30, this is like, whoa. I think right now I'm at about 90
Nice.
and it's like mind blowing. I was like, oh my god, and people tell me like this is a good design and it really is fun to knit, and I'm like, yeah, I know it is, but I don't know why I didn't expect you guys to like it so much.
Right.
I'm working on another design right now, and so I'm knitting it right now. Just again, I've knitted it before. I've made it. It's another shawl because shawls are my passion. So I've knitted that shawl before, but I've never written it down. So right now I'm knitting it and writing it down.
Mhm.
And then I have yarn coming in maybe next week or the week after for more like winter, like late fall winter design shawl scarf.
So when you were like looking for testers, did you just announce it on your Instagram? How did you look for testers?
I announced it on my Instagram and I did a short video on TikTok asking for testers. And I think I got 2 testers coming from TikTok. And I had a lot, I've had about 50 people um, like given the showing the interest in being test knitters. I picked a lot. I think we had like 16 testers, which is a lot.
Right.
Now I know that I'm gonna do less, but I was just happy and for the first pattern for something that English is not my first language, so for me to write something in English, and I needed the more people the better, so they could tell me if my English is really English in writing patterns, if you can really understand what I'm trying to say. Yeah, so I had people mostly from Instagram and some people from TikTok. Yes.
What would you say, like in that from that experience, what would make a good tester versus frustrating tester?
um I really can't say because I was surprised that all my testers were really good. I think from 6 out of 16 testers, I've had one person did not finish the shawl and she disappeared. But she did half of it and then she disappeared. So I don't know what happened to her. But everybody else either finished earlier and gave very good feedback. Very good feedback, meaning not like, oh, it's so pretty. No, they say like, okay, it's written correctly, you like missing some commas here, or like the wording should be better here or something. So this is a good feedback for me when it's like, useful.
Right.
Um, so that's that. From now going on forward, in my next test knit, I'm sure that I like the idea of having a chat for test knitters where they can talk to each other,
Right.
not just like chatting about whatever. That that's fine too. But mostly because if somebody has a question, and this is me being a test knitter, like I test knit too a lot. So when I have a question about something in the pattern, I'd like to put it, instead of just going to the designer, like emailing and waiting for an answer, I'd like to put it in the chat and see if somebody else has the same problem.
Right.
And if we can figure it out, if it's just me being not understanding, or if it's something that in the pattern there that needs to be fixed. So that's that. And as for being a tester, there are some people who are like, you give them the design and you say like, okay, you need to use this kind of yarn. And they would be like, well, I use different kind of yarn and different weight, and I did this and that, and it didn't come out right. Well, that's why it didn't come out right. So just like, do, as a test knitter, you just need to do what you need, like what you're told, basically.
Right. Do you feel like, because with shawls it's less important, the gauge, right? But do you feel frustrated with the tension of people, like that some people might be such tight knitters that your generous size shawl suddenly becomes this baby shawl, like sort of with your socks, the first socks that you needed?
Yeah. Well, I have my gauge. I'm pretty loose knitter right now, thanks to my grandma. um, but with the shawl, I did put, again, the pattern that I released, and I think my second pattern will be the same idea too, that if you make it and you realize it's too small, you can still add the repetitions of the pattern to make it bigger. So it's not that crucial for that. Yeah.
Right.
But again, I understand, like whenever I knit, whenever I test somebody's pattern, I know that I have to take um, smaller needles or bigger needles, like depending on that, because I know what my gauge is. So just something that you have to be okay with.
Right. How many projects do you work on at the time? Like, are you a multiple project knitter or are you one project girl?
Definitely not one project. I think right now I have one, two, three, four things I'm working on. At some point a few months ago, I think I had 9. It's just, I don't even know why. I like, is it sometimes like I start one thing and I'm halfway there and I want to take a break because I'm tired of this color, I'm tired of the pattern, or I got new yarn and it's really pretty and I want to try it out.
Right.
So it doesn't bother me, and I know at all times what I have. So like right now I started a cardigan, and I started in the fall, and then I kind of got other projects and then other projects and other projects. So I still have that cardigan. I know I have it, but it just makes no sense to knit it right now in the summer. So I just put it away. I know I still have it, but I will come back to it whenever it gets a little bit colder.
Do you ever feel guilty about that cardigan lying there and looking at you accusingly?
No, it's in the bag in there. It's not looking at. No, I don't think so. Like I think it's useless to feel guilty about it because that's not going to change anything. I just know that I will get to it or I will unravel it. So either way, it's going to be fine.
Do you ever get under pressure with the social media, with reels, with like the fact that you need to post, how much you need to post?
I do, yes. I do. So I've decided a couple of months ago that I'm going to give myself a week, like every week, I'm going to give myself a day that I'm allowed not to post anything. And it's okay. And it's also, from the other side, it's good for the algorithm because when you disappear for a day and then you come back, the Instagram kind of like pushes you up to, to, so
Revives.
when the algorithm thinks that you are not interested on Instagram anymore, so it wants to, like, as soon as you post something, it wants to give you a bigger feedback to like kind of like bring you back. That's why you might see sometimes people who just started doing reels, for example, like their first or second reel is going like really big. It gets like 100,000 views, even though it might not be like a very good one or not very, informational something, but that's how the algorithm tries to get you into this, so you spend more time on the platform.
Right.
So that's good too. So that's kind of, I'm makes me feel better that like even if I disappear for a day, I know that I can come back to it. So
What would make a really bad reel in your view?
um I think something that's not giving you anything. So usually a good reel should be either give you some, it should be either like educational, so it should teach you something, or it should entertain you, or it should be something, just to show you something new. um, when it's nothing, it's just, it's like, okay, all right. And if it was like the music that's not working good with what you're seeing, or like the lighting is not good, and it's just like, okay, all right.
You mentioned in one of your posts that you love pineapple on your pizza. I actually do too. We have a lot in common, apparently. But do you feel like people know you? Do you feel like your followers are your friends, and do you feel like they want to know this information?
um I think I'm pretty open about like the information that I give out. I'm pretty open about it. There are some things that, of course, I don't show, but yeah, I feel like people, I feel like I show a lot of important stuff, and I'm not shy to say things like, whenever I'm having a bad day or whenever I feel like overwhelmed or something, I can always post about it. And I know that I'm going to get people who feel the same way. Um, they're going to message me or they're going to comment on my post. And yeah, I think people know me. Yeah.
Have you ever had this celebrity moment when you're just walking on the street or something and people come to you and like, oh, I've seen your reel?
It happened a couple of times, but I don't know. Again, remember my low self-esteem. So it once happened with a girl. Her kid goes to the same school as my kid. So I was walking on the street after dropping my kids off, and she was like, "Wait, are you Gotham.knits?" And I was like, "Yes." And I had like, after shower, like my hair was all up and I had no makeup. And I'm like, okay, can we continue this conversation later? Because I look like this. So but now I'm thinking like, was it really because I'm famous, or was it because her kids go to the same school? But yeah, I don't know. I think it's more of like, I feel this way like a celebrity or something, like just a person who had reached out to a lot of people more when a yarn company or some company reach out to me and said, hey, we've seen your reels and we want to give you something just because you're so awesome. That's what really makes me feel good.
What's your goal? Like at the end of this year, let's say, you're looking back at this year and you look at all the reels that you posted and all the things that you've knitted. Do you feel satisfied with that progress? Do you have some big dreams for the future?
I think I'm pretty happy right now also. I think I like where this is going. So at first when I just started doing reels, I was happy with just the amount of people coming in. Then I the next step was the yarn companies reaching out to me and getting some yarn sponsored. Then now the next step is, well, then there was TikTok also, that it pays the influencers for the views and stuff. So that was next. Now that I'm getting with this reels uh, thing, I wanna launch something, maybe like a reels clinic or something like that. So just like a boot camp to teach people what I know, to just like kind of give them a boost and help. I already had a couple of people reach out to me asking when will I do that, so they want to get that. So I think it's just gradually going up and up, and I'm very happy at every step of the way. So that's good.
Right. So is that your general view on the like life, to celebrate all the small victories, to celebrate all the small moments?
I think the idea I think the idea is not to compare yourself with other people too much, because if you do that, you're just never going to be happy, because there's always somebody who's better, or who has more money or more followers or more something or more something. So I think it's better to be happy at where I am, and the more, like, you just don't stop, like, be happy, but don't stop, just keep going. You have your own path, you have your own pace, just keep going. And yeah, and don't forget to have fun at every step. Yes. I still complain. Believe me, I still complain to my husband about everything. It's also like this is the thing that another thing that like you guys should know about me, and like it's gonna make you feel like you know me better. I do like to complain, but I don't complain so people can fix it, or so people can give me advice on it. I just complain because when I say it out loud, it helps me understand what I'm doing wrong, or what I can be doing better. So it helps me kind of to see the way. So now my husband knows it, because in the beginning of our relationship, whenever I would complain about something, when I would be like, this happened, this happened, this happened, and he was like, well, maybe. I'm like, no, don't say anything. What are you talking? I'm not saying it for that. I'm just talking like basically to myself, but like I'm talking next to you. So this is how it is. Whenever I complain, it's not because I need somebody to fix it for me. I just complain because um, I'm kind of fixing it for myself when I say it out loud.
Well, thank you so very much for being my guest today. I'm so glad you agreed to this interview.
Thank you so much.